Hello and welcome to episode number 7 of Gar Borras' Rewind. This is our, of course, spin-off show we created. Gar, I can't believe it's been over a year since we last did one of these. I was looking at one of the past episodes, and it's really fun. I thought it was time to do it. So why don't you share with the folks? One of the big parts of this show has always been the fact that Gar Borras comes from a special location. Where are you coming from today, my friend?
Well, I chose Garden Amp because I'm doing a show here in a couple of weeks, in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow, that's fun. It's a little cloudy out there today, but it's all good. It's summertime, and you have a concert, like you said, coming up in a few weeks now. Gar, we always have a lot of fun doing this show. I'm of course talking about the Time Machine, and our latest episode is no exception. I know you're a big horror fan, so I recently got the DVD, actually Blu-ray of Creature from a Black Lagoon. I thought, you know what? That thing came out like in 1954, I think it is. It's time to do a episode about it. I'm glad we did. Share your memories of a recent episode we did.
Oh, for me, it's always going back to my childhood because that's the time that I was experiencing all of these things for the first time.
Yeah,
And I'm so fortunate because there's just a lot, a lot of people that I know that are my age, they don't remember this stuff,
yeah,
that happened so long ago. But for me, I've just been blessed with this memory where I remember all of these things, with such detail. So, I don't know. To me, it feels like kind of like a blessing because I love pop culture so much. And you wouldn't remember so much with so much detail if it wasn't special to you.
sure, sure. And when we do these episodes, we always talk about doing the research, and that's a big part of the show. There's part of the what we talk about is our from our own memory, but then you research, to remind yourself things that took place, like in this case, regarding the creature of a Black Lagoon. And it's always fun because we learn new things. For example, who wasn't aware of, course, the creature from Black Lagoon, but what I was unaware of myself, maybe it's because of my age, Gar, I was not aware of the fact that there were two other films that followed this. It was part of the trilogy of films, and so I thought, oh wow, okay, I'm gonna go check those out now. And just doing the show, we learn things like that.
Well, for me, it's always, the follow up or the second one or the third one is always a disappointment. And I have to admit it that back in those days, the older days, that used to be a lot more common. The follow up, say like when you come out with the original and then, oh, it's so successful. So the studios decide, well, let's come up with another one, let's make just as much money. And they're always a disappointment, you know, you know, so for me, the one that really stands out, I mean, because when you watch the other ones, they are definitely a retro experience, but the ultimate retro experience is the original Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, sure. There's no denying that. And we should also mention another interesting thing we learned about the making of the film was the fact that it was one of the very first 3D films. And if you check out the current episode, you'll hear us talk a little bit about that. There's also the fact it was one of the first films where they had underwater camera filming taking place during the movie making.
Well, 3D and underwater filming were both, as you mentioned, brand new at that time. It was the first explorations into those areas. And the original first movie that came out was The House of Wax. Uh, you know, um, and I remember in House of Wax there was a part. of the movie where there was a guy with one of those paddles with a ball
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
attached to like a rubber band string, and you would paddle that ball. And what they did was, because it was in 3D, he was paddling that ball and
Wow.
it was going towards the camera. And it was funny because I was watching it on TV, and at the time when I was watching it was not 3D. It was
Yeah,
regular TV. And so I didn't know at the time why they were doing this visual, with the
yeah,
paddle,
yeah,
but then later on, of course, I find out that it's because it was 3D, and I wasn't actually seeing at the time
yeah,
what was the big deal about that guy with the paddle
yeah,
and
yeah,
the ball.
yeah,
But
and
that was that first thing where they were really making a big deal about 3D, and then the follow up after that was Creature of the Black Lagoon, and so then you have a completely different 3D experience, because now it's tied into underwater and all of
yeah,
this whole thing like that. And then of course they're tying it also into enhancing the scary moments. And by today's standards, we watch those scary moments and they're so tame.
yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
They're just so not scary by today's standards. But when you go back to 1958, when the movie came out, that was, I mean, people were terrified,
Yeah, yeah,
at the time. So it's just I really wish, that people could experience, what it was like to watch these
yeah,
movies at those times, with the knowledge that we had at that time, which, we had not become so jaded over the years of seeing all of this stuff in movies and TVs and
yeah, yeah.
special effects and all of that
Oh,
stuff.
sure. Yeah.
Now we're kind of jaded, so we look back at this stuff and it's like, you're shrugging your shoulders going, what's the big deal? You
That's
know
so
what I mean?
scary, that
But
creature.
back
Yeah.
in 1958, I'm kind of, getting redundant, but yeah, they were terrified.
I mean, filmmaking was in its infancy at that point. I mean, it hadn't even reached the point that it is today, technology wise. I mean, going back to the first Dracula film, 1931, I believe it was, um, they had, if you go back and watch that film, very, filmmaking, very, in its amateur stage, to the simple point that it was what was referred to as a talkie because there's very little talking in it though. I think Dracula himself, is in the movie most of the time on the screen by himself, not really doing any kind of talking. And then he says limited lines, and so that's one of the first films that were you actually have an actor speaking on screen. Are you there,
Well,
Gar?
yeah, I was.
Okay,
There
sorry.
is
I,
somebody that's here that's looking at the calendar, so I was interested,
okay,
for the
yeah.
upcoming concerts.
Oh, cool.
But for me, back in those days, this is what it was like to watch a scary movie back in the 1960s
Yeah,
when you're a kid. I distinctly remember watching, a scary movie, with, your classic with the lights turned off,
yeah, yeah,
and it's all dark in the house, and you're watching the scary movie, and then you have to go to the bathroom.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the typical thing at that time was you're going to the bathroom in the dark, and you are literally spooked by anything in any dark corner that you might see on your way to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, yeah.
And these movies are not scary by today's standards,
No, no.
but I distinctly remember as a child, experiencing that, having to, go to the bathroom and
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
it, and just being totally spooked
yeah, yeah,
by
yeah,
just going to the bathroom while watching a scary movie.
yeah, yeah.
That is how different, It is, now, when we watch it now, we are not spooked and we're not experienced because we're so jaded
Yeah,
by,
yeah,
what's come after. And it just, makes that look so,
yeah,
what's the big deal?
yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? But I was just like everybody else. At that time, I was totally spooked.
yeah, yeah. And Gar, in doing these past episodes of A Time Machine, especially when we talk about these classic horror films, one thing we've learned along the way is, the history of Universal Studios, as far as they were the ones that were really known for these monster movies and these classic horror flicks. Now, much to my surprise, in doing the research for a current episode, come to find out that after The Creature of the Black Lagoon came out, and those other two movies, they kind of closed shop as far as making these monster movies. It was the last kind of universal monster that they created, and it's kind of like, wow, did they go out in a bang if that's what they decided to end it on?
Well, it was just that studio. There was a lot of other studios that
Sure.
went on to do, do what we call by today's standards
Yeah.
uh B movies. And there were during that time there were a lot of B movies.
Yeah.
And some of these movies that they were putting out at that time are all-time classic retros.
Sure. Sure.
Something in Planet Nine and all, what I mean? All of these different movies that were being put out at that time, science fiction, horror, and all of this stuff. So maybe that one studio decided to go in a different direction, but B movies were alive and well at that time. They were, Ed Wood,
Sure.
was one of those champions, leading the charge of those type of movies, extremely limited budget movies,
Yeah. Yeah.
where you're watching them and they're just, they're putting movies together by the seat of their pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so
Yeah.
trippy to look at it now because it's a finished product.
Sure.
But these people were literally MacGyvering, putting movies together back in those days, literally like MacGyver.
Yeah, and Gar, people go back and watch any past episodes of A Time Machine. One thing they will see is we have kind of created our own vocabulary in these episodes. For example, some of the Gar Borras vocabulary comes to mind: trailblazers. You know, um, and I bring that up because especially Universal Studios at the time, they set the standard for these classic horror and monster movies. And what I mean by that is people don't realize Universal Studios at one point they had a set list of people that were these makeup artists. That's what they professionalized in. They were, they worked for their studios. I mean, like something like the Frankenstein makeup and that. We've talked about the fact it took them 3 hours to put the makeup, together, ready to get it
Well,
on.
that was a whole industry, the makeup and all of that stuff. It was a whole industry that now, because of CGI and digital, it's not necessary. But back in those days, it was a whole industry.
Sure. Sure. And another fun aspect of A Time Machine is because it is a pop culture show, Gar, when people tune in, we could be talking about everything from your favorite classic TV show, classic TV commercials, which we have done, favorite TV show theme songs. These are all past episodes people can go and check out. And that's what makes the show so much fun.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's for me, when I was experiencing it way back in the '60s, the last thing it was all, what I was experiencing for the first time, and now, I've come to the realization, at this stage of my life, it's so many years later, I look at it as retro now.
Yeah,
and it's so that actually dawned on me this morning when I
yeah,
was kind of getting ready to to do the show, that yeah, you come to these realizations, that how you look at it now is very different than how you used to look at it back then.
yeah. I mean, I laugh at the thought like that we could put together an hour show just on classic TV commercials, and one of the ones I remember we mentioned in that episode was back in the day. It didn't seem like you'd think much of it, but Mr. Whiffle squeezing the Charmin. I mean, that was such a huge part of our life. I laugh when I say that.
Well, I am well, I mean, we're getting really kind of weird topic right
Yeah.
now, but because of Mr. Whipple, I am a loyal Charmin
There you go.
customer.
There you go. Yeah, yeah,
I treat my bottom well.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's change the subject.
Well, I will say one last thing on our episode on the classic TV commercial. One of the featured commercials, of course, was a classic "Where's the Beef?" Wendy's commercial, and
Oh, well, yeah, you can't think about commercials from that without that being one of the first things that pops in your head. Where's the beef?
and
You
then
know what I
Gar.
mean?
I remember during that episode talking about the fact that the little old lady that kind of really made the commercial, I forget what her name was, but she was some Russian lady that they discovered. She was a hairdresser at some hair salon, and she talked like that because she had emphysema. But that's how they discovered her working in a hair salon of all
Yeah, she
places.
was perfect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perfect. And I'm sure she enjoyed every minute of her
Right.
10 minutes of fame.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a bit more than 10 minutes of fame, but you
yeah,
know what I'm getting at.
yeah, yeah. And the commercial became such a success that eventually, she was making a ton of money, starring in the commercials. And it got to a point where it cost Wendy's too much money to make the commercials. So they just stopped using her.
Well, she priced herself out of the market. But, that is the
Show business.
that's our capitalist system.
There
You
you
know
go.
what I
There you,
mean?
sometimes in doing these episodes, modern day news becomes a part of it. And when I'm talking about one of our more recent ones, we did on Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, where of course we had the idea, why don't we, there's a couple of reasons, not just because Brian Wilson passed, but I was thinking at the time, we haven't done an episode on anything to do with the Beach Boys, so now is a better time than any, and it was a real fun episode to do.
Well, yeah, and you realize how much more there was to the Beach Boys. When before we started doing that episode, it was kind of like the tip of the iceberg. But
Mm.
once we started, doing the show and doing the research and everything, you find out that there was so much more
Behind the
to
scenes.
their story,
Yeah,
and going in so many different directions.
yeah,
The competition with the Beatles, the Charles Manson connection,
yeah, yeah.
just so many different directions and so many different. Like I said, before when we started, all we really kind of knew about was the tip of the iceberg, but there was so much more.
And that's why we had to kind of when we did that episode, it came out pretty good, I thought. But what we did is we made a point of okay, part of this is going to be as a tribute to Brian Wilson because he just passed. So again, it was very important to keep to try to keep it as positive as possible. I mean, we mentioned everything from Brian Wilson's mental breakdown to his heavy drug use, but we that wasn't the main focus. If it was just a brief mention, if you know what I mean.
Well, and that really, the brief mention is really adequate to how much that really had to do with his story, anyways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it was just a small part. Yes, it was part of his story, but it was a small part. It wasn't a gigantic, large part, you
we,
know.
we focused
Uh,
on the band and Brian's life and the music in general because as we discovered during that episode, I mean, I don't think there's too many people out there that can at least name, at least 5 to 6 Beach Boys songs.
well, there's whenever I hear, the Beach Boys, it immediately takes me back to my elementary years in school.
Yeah,
And, because, just like today, the radio and music is the soundtrack of our
sure.
lives. It was like that back then. And guess what? The Beach Boys was part of that soundtrack of our lives back in the 1960s. A
Yeah,
very large part of that soundtrack.
yeah. Another thing we mentioned that people may laugh about this when I say this, but we mentioned during the Beach Boys episode is the fact that sometimes pop culture has a way of interacting with music and stuff. And in fact, that ever since I think Dennis Williamson drowned, the drummer they've been using has been John Stamos from Uncle Jesse from Full House. But it's because he's a drummer, he's a musician, he can play guitar, he can sing, he's friends with these guys, and so it was a natural thing for him to ask him to join the band.
Well, that's something I didn't know. John Stamos, is a member of the Beach Boys. That's kind of for a guy like him, that's got to be a fun gig.
In fact, and part of what we talked about in the Beach Boys episode was the fact that once he started playing out with the guys and he was still doing Full House at the time, if you go on YouTube, you can actually find an episode Full House with the Beach Boys.
Ah, I used to enjoy that show. It was a very good show.
Yeah, yeah, for its day. Um, and another thing, Garb, it comes up from time to time that I love about our show is as we're doing the episodes, from time to time, things will come up. For example, I forget which episode, but there's one of these recent episodes, and you happen to bring up how much you love the movie Pulp Fiction. So I got thinking, well, hey, you know what? That would make for a great. So coming up in a couple of weeks from now, we're going to be doing that.
Oh man, Pulp Fiction is such a diverse movie. There will be no shortage of subject matter. You know what I mean? It's just for me, I'm sure I'll go off on this, when we do the episode, but it is literally a parade of one great scene after another.
Mhm.
That's the way I look at Pulp Fiction. It's literally a parade of one great scene right after another. And it just keeps going on and on throughout the movie. There, and it seems that, I'm not, I'm not a quote actor. I don't get in front of the camera
Yeah,
and do this whole thing, but it seems that actors and actresses, when they become involved in certain projects, it seems that I get this impression that it becomes competitive,
sure.
and it becomes competitive where everybody knows that the scene that was just shot before that
Yeah,
particular scene was such a great scene, and the stakes are really high, that everybody is looking to make the scene that they are in
mm,
steal the scene from the previous one, which just makes for one great scene after another, because everybody was taking their acting and their artistic creativity to their highest that they can muster out of themselves.
yeah,
And to me, those are my favorite kind of movies. And there are a lot of movies, not all movies are like this, but there are a lot of movies, and those are some of my favorite movies when it's literally, virtually every scene, is in competition with the previous scene, trying to make their scene just as good as that or better, and actually going for better.
yeah, yeah. And while we're on the
Very
subject,
competitive.
Pulp Fiction, there are such things as you say as iconic actors. John Travolta being a great example of that. I mean, we could sit here and make a list, Gar. I mean, when I think of John Travolta, okay, Welcome Back, Kotter, Urban Cowboy, Pulp Fiction, Michael, Grease, just to name a few.
And there's so many movies that were labeled his comeback movie.
Yeah, yeah,
It's almost like he's the Stones, and they're doing another farewell tour.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I mean, if I had a nickel for every movie that they call John Travolta's comeback movie,
yeah, yeah.
and it really it is rooted in reality because his career kind of was like a roller coaster. He goes up in popularity and then kind of wanes in popularity,
Back up.
and then he becomes popular again, and then he wanes. It's kind of like a roller coaster.
Yeah,
And so in turn, that's the reason why there are quite a few movies in his history that are labeled comeback movies.
sure,
Urban
sure.
Cowboy was labeled a comeback movie. Pulp Fiction was labeled a comeback movie.
Yeah,
There were so many movies that he did that got that label more than any other actor that I can think of.
yeah, yeah. And speaking of John Travolta, we got a couple episodes talking about him. I mean, two that come to mind. We did Welcome Back, Kotter episode. We also did about Saturday Night Fever and the craze around the disco music and stuff in the 1970s. So those are two fun episodes people can check out as well.
When you're talking, it's how did they assemble all those great actors and actresses
Yeah,
when they put together the cast for Pulp Fiction?
yeah,
You know that that is something that people don't really think that much about, but
mm,
just assembling a cast is not an easy task
yeah,
for the studios to put together when they're assembling casts.
yeah,
And I use this term on the Time Machine a lot, but here every time I use it, it is perfectly appropriate. Them being able to assemble that cast for Pulp Fiction was another capturing of lightning in a bottle.
there you go.
Literally it
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's just one of those things that it doesn't happen very often.
yeah, yeah,
And I don't think that a lot of people think about that, but yes, just assembling that cast,
yeah,
could not have been an easy thing to put together. And they did it, and they were definitely. I mean, look at what happened because, to this day, it is considered one of the greatest movies in the history of movies.
yeah. And to this day, and it's never waned really. I mean, in popularity, you hear people talking about it to this day. And Gar, another fun aspect of our show is just how much fun we have making it. I mean, I don't know if you've ever noticed. Sometimes when we're doing these shows, as we're recording the episode, um, I get so into it myself, like sitting here and listening to what you're saying. Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I kind of lose my train of thought.
when we first talked about doing all of this,
Uh,
neither of us had a clue,
what was gonna?
what was, how it was going to wind up taking its course and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
But both of us, the furthest things from our mind how many years later now, and
Going
we're
4 or 5.
still
Yeah,
doing this,
yeah. Oh,
so, it's, we're not being paid to do this.
no, no.
So what does that tell you? This is a work of passion.
Yeah, work of
That
love, and
is definitely the only label that you can put on it
yeah,
is we are doing this because it is totally derived from passion.
yeah, yeah, and even in our promotion of the episodes, like today, I put on our official Facebook page for Gar Borras' Time Machine that we were going to be doing this, and it's been over a year since we've done one of these rewind episodes. I got to tell people another fun aspect of the show, Gar. Sometimes things really happen accidentally, like even in the promotions. I remember one time when we were promoting the latest episode, you put something up to the effect of, Hey, come and join us for the latest episode of Gar Borras' Time Machine, everybody's favorite pop culture playground. Now, that's something we haven't mentioned in quite a while, but it happened on the spot. And I remember right then reading that and reaching out to you and saying, you know what, Gar? Without even knowing it, you just came up with the catchphrase for the show.
Yeah, the tagline.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? But the best ones always come organically.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, So you can't. Unfortunately, if you sit down and you try to think of something and
Not gonna be as
try to
good.
make
Yeah,
one up,
yeah,
it'll never happen.
yeah, yeah,
But that's part of the creative process is not just the ability to come up with it, but to recognize,
yeah, yeah,
hey, there's something there. That is part of the creative process. You can't have it without having the ability to recognize
yeah,
it.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? That
Yeah.
there's something there. You know what
And,
I mean?
and we didn't even make it a thing to cash in on in the sense that, again, like I said, it's not something we constantly bring up, but it's in the background. It's part of the story now. And I love the fact that it just kind of happened accidentally. You type it online, you know?
Well, it's just kind of like the world's most dangerous tribute band.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
That one happened organically too. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? So it's just for me there's an enjoyment
Sure. To this.
of uh, having this ability to uh, contribute to the creative process.
Yeah, and it's
You
really a
know,
team effort. We both created together
yes,
and could not do
yes.
it without the other. And let's be honest, we probably could, but it would not be as much fun. It would not be the same type of thing. I love the fact that I do this with you, Gar, every 2 weeks. In fact, that's another fun thing I think we both have in relation to the show is that I know I'm always thinking when we wrap up an episode, okay, what are we going to do 2 weeks from now? What are we going to be talking about? And we always have a ton of ideas. There's never been a shortage of ideas.
Never, never. It's by it, I never really thought about this,
Yeah,
but when we first started out, uh, the show immediately had a natural chemistry.
sure.
There wasn't something that had to be developed or anything. The show has remained pretty much the same,
Yeah,
throughout all this time because the show's been on for years
4 or
now.
5 years.
You know,
Yeah, if
yeah.
anything, it's progressed. It's gone. We get better with each episode, which isn't always easy to do. I can't really sit here and think of one episode that kind of fell flat or anything like that.
No, the improvement was not a conscious
Yeah,
improvement. It was just the improvements that just kind of happened organically, naturally on their own.
yeah, yeah.
And to me, all of that, just you know, I don't
How do you
I
explain
don't
it,
know
right?
how to do my life without being creative.
Me too. Yeah,
And this show just gives me another opportunity to be part of another creative process,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm very grateful for the invitation.
Well, glad you accepted. Now, this is probably a great place to end this. It's almost time to wrap it up. Let's talk about what we're going to do next week when we do the time machine. We're going to be talking about married with children, and that's another one of these subjects that come up constantly in the conversations of past episodes. And so it's one of those things where we say, why not? It's come up enough. Okay, I think there's something there.
Honestly, I think that's going to be a big episode. I
Yeah,
think that one's going to get a lot of views. That show was extremely popular. Not not just popular, extremely popular.
Yeah,
I'll be really surprised if it's not
yeah,
one of our highest rated shows, because I mean we've got some very high rated
sure,
shows.
sure.
It surprised me when I looked back and saw that, how many people, how many views that we've gotten for some of these episodes.
Yeah,
So I just have a very strong feeling that it's going to be up there, quite possibly up there with Three's Company, because I think that's the number one
I think so.
most watched episode of all of the Time Machines. But
Well,
it's going to be
Gar,
right up there
I
with
hate to cut you
Mr.
off, Gar,
Limpet.
but it's getting ready to cut us off, so we have to say goodbye, my friend. Till
See,
next
we need
time.
time.
Hey, bye bye.